Hey everyone, what is going on? What is going on? Hope that everyone is doing well today. It has been a while since I have been on. It has been a while. So today I was just, inspired to come on and do a live here, a IG. So hey everyone, what's happening? My name is Curtis Brooks. I am a men's life coach. Hey, what's going on, man? I'm not sure that DH. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. What's going on? Thanks for joining. Once again, my name is Curtis Brooks. I am a men's life coach. I help men communicate their way to healthy relationships. So today, guys, we're going to talk about effeminate men. And the title of this broadcast is Why Effeminate Men Cannot Become Good Leaders. Why effeminate men cannot become good leaders. So thanks for joining, everyone. Hopefully you will share this out, and if you don't mind, I'd love to have you share this out because it's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a good conversation. I'm a men's life coach, as I mentioned earlier. I've been in this space of coaching men for more than 10 years, actually. It is my passion. I love coaching men. I love working with men. So that's kind of what I do. That's kind of my name to fame, I guess, so to speak. But anyways, it's been a long time coming because I had not always wanted to coach men. We're a tough crowd. We're a tough crowd. But once we are persuaded now, it's hard to get us to turn the other way now. It's hard to get us to not submit to something, or at least come into a particular understanding. Once we're there, man. We're sold out for it. And so I am a believer. I first want to start that off. I'm a believer, believer in Christ, it is. And so if you're here and faith-based conversations kind of strike you or rub you the wrong way, it's okay. You are absolutely invited to check out other streams. There are actually lots of streams going on around the same time here. So again, we're talking about effeminate men, and the title is Why Effeminate Men Cannot Become Good Leaders. And so what I always like to do is start off with a definition. And that's just what I like to do. I'm a wordsmith, and that's my unofficial title, is wordsmith. But anyways, I'm kind of going to take my time with this one here because I think it's a great conversation. It's a much needed conversation. Oftentimes we as men, we want to take the lead. We want to take our position. And I think it's more than just a role, if you will. We have a position, that's been given to us from day one, essentially. Before we were even born, even thought about. It was already a set of conditions that were already established for us as men. And oftentimes, because we don't know that, we don't understand that, we are completely out of line with what God has said, or what he has spoken, or what he has declared, what he has established from the very foundations of the earth. So we're completely out of line because we don't understand this. So that being said, looking at the definition of effeminate. Okay, and it says, and I'm reading this out of the dictionary.com. This is a app that I have on my phone here. Again, that's dictionary.com. And it says, of a man or boy having traits, taste, habits, etc., traditionally considered feminine, as softness or delicacy. That doesn't make it sound really well at all. Definition number two. Hey, what's going on, Ron? Thanks for joining, man. Definition number two, characterized by excessive softness, delicacy, self-indulgence. And that self-indulgence, as I read number two, that definition number two, is almost like a person who is not disciplined to be in charge of their emotions. So that's self-indulgence. And it can be not necessarily emotions, it could be overspending, but perhaps emotional as well. But again, not being able to, or inability to take charge of themselves. Again, that's self-indulgence. That's number two. And then it says, number three, it says to make or become effeminate. And so meaning that a boy who has, again, been purposely, or again, I don't even know if a woman does that purposely, but oftentimes these effeminate males, men, they come from single parent households, as in single mothers, and that's just the way that works there. And let's see here, and that's going to be that's going to do it for another definition says definition of effeminate or as an adjective. It says lacking firmness or vigor, an infinite piece of writing. So a person the writing, or just the context of the writing, not so much the content to it, but the context of the writing could be sound effeminate, real soft, perhaps void of making a particular point, or no real firmness, as it's mentioned here. And so where do we get these effeminate men? That's the question I'm asking. Where do these effeminate men come from? How are they created? As I already stated, these effeminate men are commonly created by single mothers. Single mothers, again, I don't believe that it's done intentionally. I think because single mothers having to do what they have to do, and even well before that, the nature of a woman is she's emotional. She is wired to be an emotional creature. That's just how God made her. And then for a man, we're more wired to be logical. And I know many of you have heard this before, perhaps, maybe, but we're wired to be more logical. But before, most of us as men, young boys, young girls as well, but because we're talking about men or young boys, before we can actually step into that thinking that is required, or that logical part of us that needs to be provoked, if you will, by asking questions, or at least in most cases provoked by another man, before we can tap into that space, again, being raised predominantly by a single mother, and oftentimes, even if the father is in the house, sometimes fathers can be hands off in the rearing of a child. Meaning that they're, what did your mom say? That kind of thing. So there's really, the father does not come from a disciplinary space, if you will. Perhaps he may have been disciplined, but in most cases, he may not be the disciplinary as well. So the disciplinary may be the woman. And so, again, for the woman being wired, again, by God's design, not something I'm making up, but by God's design, because the woman is wired to be more emotional. The young man, or the young boy, he picks up these traits that are commonly displayed or on display by way of a woman. And this is the way we get the word effeminate. And so the challenge with these particular individuals is that they don't even know that they're that way. They don't even understand that this is the person that they've become. Again, it's not because mom does it intentionally, or a single mother does it intentionally, or even the father does it intentionally, because there can be a lot of different things going on. And because there are a lot of different things going on, again, psychologically, and just challenges with the father growing up as a child himself, or the mother, and things of that nature, because there's so many different things going on, it can be difficult to pinpoint one thing over the other. It can happen. I mean, you can get to the nuts and bolts of it, but oftentimes men don't know that they're in that space. And so as a result, this is what happens. They become very catty. They become very catty like a woman. And this is not putting women down. This is not me badgering men and no, I don't have an issue with men. I love being a man, and I wouldn't want to be anything else other than a man. So I'm perfectly okay in my skin. perfectly okay as a man. And this is, thank you, God. So, but my point is that there are oftentimes a lot of men, they're not familiar with this space. They don't know that they're there. And so as a result, again, as I mentioned, one, they become very catty, sounding like women. As I read to you the definition, they have a difficult time keeping relationships, long relationships. And if they are in long relationships, it's because they have essentially become, yes, honey, yes, baby, what do you want me to do? And that kind of thing. And I would even go as far as say a lot of these men are more like mama's boys. And they will come off, or young boys, men as well, they will come off like they've got it together and that I'm the man, that kind of thing. And I think it's one of those things in life that if you are comfortable with who you are, you don't have to put on a show or put on display as, in regards to you being a man. You don't have to put that on display. It's just something that happens. And so the challenge is that a lot of men are missing the examples. And as I mentioned to you before, it can also take place even when the father is there. So it's not necessarily coming from a place where the mother is raising the child, the young boy by herself. It can also be that the mother is a two-parent household where the father, again, as I mentioned earlier, the father, he may not be a disciplinary person. He may be one of those persons, at least men who are coming from that mindset, is that I work and I provide. That's what I do, and that's what makes me a man. And again, not that men are saying this, but essentially some are actually. But this is the crux of it, is that I work and I work hard, I make the money, I bring the money home to pay the bills, and I shouldn't have to discipline my children. And again, this may not be what they're saying, but the damage takes place is that when we attribute that thinking to, or at least place that thinking, that mindset, and this is the challenge with men not taking the lead, is because some of us, or at least coming from the mindset, whereas we don't think that we need to be the disciplinary in our families, in our household. And because we're not the disciplinary or the individual that's being disciplining our children, because we don't believe that, or at least take that role or that position as a disciplining our boys, our girls as well, we have a tendency to place that responsibility on the woman. And when the woman disciplines, she disciplines, or their lack of discipline, out of emotions. And men discipline out of logic. And again, it doesn't mean that they can't take it there as well, because we can all be emotional, and women can be just as logical as well. But innately, women are wired to be emotional creatures, and men are wired to be more logical creatures. And because we can come from two-parent households, and effeminate men be raised in two-parent households, and obviously effeminate men can be also raised naturally in single-parent households. And again, this does not mean that all men are effeminate because they've been raised by single mothers. It doesn't mean that all men are effeminate because they've been raised by a two-parent household, which there's again a tendency when the father is not playing an active role in being a disciplinary in his child's life. Conversely, the women can become way, way too emotional. They already are innately wired to be emotional, but with the lack of a man's presence, there's a lack of logical thinking. There's a lack of reasoning. And because there's a lack of reasoning, all too often what happens is that you have men, you have young boys who don't know who they are, who have not tapped into this logical space. Again, this part of that brain, that part of our brain where we are being able to reason. And though we may get it wrong at times, especially as young boys, though we may get it wrong, that's why the Father is there. That's why it's so important for the Father to be there to reason with us so that we can confide with the Father and have a conversation. And hence the word confidence, that our confidence has grown, or our confidence has been built up, or our confidence is increasing because we have someone you confide in with our reasoning. And it's not just about us, again, not having that ability, or at least having that example. That's why the example of a father is so crucial, ladies and gentlemen, so crucial. And hence, this is oftentimes why effeminate men cannot make good leaders. It does not mean that they cannot lead. And I think we all have, I know we all have the potential to lead. And that leadership ability has been given to all of us. But the challenge is that we need examples of what a good leader looks like. Not so much what he is, because obviously, or not so much, I stand correct, not so much what he looks like in the physical attributes, but what good leadership looks like. Not representing a physical appearance, but what does good leadership look like? And oftentimes, we have not had that example. We have not had that role model. We have not had that model of, or that example of what good leadership looks like. And here's the other piece of this. Oftentimes when men are effeminate, and I had this theory, my own little theory with men who are effeminate, a lot of times we get what we call the rappers, who will make this real harsh music about women. And here's my theory with this here, is that because the men are effeminate, again, being raised up in single parent households or two parent households where the father was not a disciplinary person within the family structure, what happens is, here's my theory, is that when the men come out, they come out angry against the fathers. They come out angry against the fathers. And so we get more of an emotional thing that the rappers will put on display. And conversely, the anger is really taken out on the women. They're mad. It's kind of like, it's like a person looking in the mirror and does not like what they see. He does not like what he sees, and he's angry with that. Again, here comes the emotional. He is not being able to tap into this logical part of this logical framework that has already been established for who he is, or at least innately, or how God has created him. So because he has not been able to tap into that space, or has not had an example of what that looks like, being able to confide with someone, to pull out this reasoning, to pull out this logical part of his brain, to be able to tap into that space, because that young man has not had an example of that, he then comes off more emotional. Again, as I read to you earlier, the definition of effeminate is having traits, tastes, habits, etc., traditionally considered feminine as softness or being delicate. And because the young man has not had an opportunity or been given an opportunity to connect with a man, he has no other recourse but to tap into that emotional side of himself. Not necessarily even understanding it, but he comes off in that space because that's what he's been given. And so his lack of understanding, or his limited understanding is from a emotional perspective. Hey, what's going on? Thanks for joining. I appreciate you. Thank you for joining. His emotional perspective comes from his mother, and because that's all she has to offer. And in most cases, there's a resentment towards the man. And so when the mother has to give off this energy to the young man, it's an emotional energy. And when she gives this off, I'm talking about rappers. And there's a backstory to this. This is a theory that I had received from God in regards to why are the rappers so angry a lot of times. And again, obviously, background is a lot more to the story than just what I'm sharing with you now. But my theory has been is that the challenge is that because the single mothers, again, resenting their situation, resenting the father, a lot of unforgiveness or situations that have taken place, experiences, this negative energy, this emotional energy comes off and it spills over into the young men's lives. And because the young men have not been able to tap into their logical part of their brain, again, that part of their brain that how men have been innately wired to reason, to speak from a place of reasoning, because young men, again, raised by single mothers, have not been able to tap into that space, lacking the experience, lacking the example, lacking the guidance. The young men come off. And again, you don't have to be, let me say this first, you don't obviously have to be just a rapper, but just in my own time and my own thinking, I said, why are these men seem to be so angry with women and the bees and the hoes and all of this stuff? And I said, why is that? And that is the theory that I've been, I'm sharing with you now, is that because they're coming from the broken homes. The father has been, in some cases, in most cases, probably emasculated. And here's the young man looking at himself and doesn't like what he sees. He doesn't like what he sees. And if he does not like what he sees, again, not having an example, he is more apt to come off from a space of being emotional. And because he comes off from that space of being emotional, again, he takes on the characteristics of a woman, being more effeminate, being more feminine in his ways, as you just may have heard me read the definition, having traits, taste, habits, etc., traditionally considered feminine as softness or delicate. And this is a definition that's coming from dictionary.com. This is not my definition, but we must understand that this is one of the reasons why effeminate men, it's not because they can't lead. I think we all have the ability to lead, but we also have to understand that leadership or taking a lead, whether you be on your job, you're a CEO, perhaps a CEO isn't an effeminate CEO as a man. And so what happens, being in a ranking position on your job or in your household, it becomes very difficult to take your stand on something where you seem logical, that you know is logical now. You know that it's logical, but what has a tendency to take place is that the man will begin to doubt. This is good stuff. The man will begin to doubt his decision making. And because he doubts his decision making, he does not take the lead. He cannot stand on a particular decision. He has a difficult time saying go, or saying no, or saying stop, or whatever the case might be. He has a difficult time making a decision because, again, having those female-like quality traits. And oftentimes with women, it's not to say that women cannot be good leaders or make good leaders. And then they absolutely can and do make good leaders and are good leaders. But innately men or women are wired to be emotional, and men are wired to be logical thinkers. And so being a man and is in a feminine space, if he has not come to understand who he is, he can absolutely come off having female-like tendencies and in a sense of being very emotional in a relationship. Doesn't mean that he is interested in men. No, it doesn't mean that. It means that because he's been raised predominantly by a woman, he will naturally pick up those traits that a woman has a tendency, or at least innately, she has been wired to display. And again, this is just how it is, folks. This is how it is. And it is absolutely unfortunate. But like I said earlier, a lot of times men don't even know that they're there. They'll come off as macho or overly macho sometimes, having and almost feeling like they've got to prove themselves. And you know, that's a disaster in itself, because it can say so many other things. You know, I won't go there, but nevertheless, it can say a lot of different things. It can say things other than this person is the right individual. This person is cut out to be the leader. This person is cut out to take this his rightful position. And what, you know, you might be asking, what in fact does all of this have to do with anything, Curtis? Well, let me share it with you. Because men can obviously turn out to be effeminate leaders, not necessarily good leaders, but effeminate leaders. And one could, you know, say there's all different kinds of leadership styles. Absolutely, there is. And I would probably agree with you on that one for sure. But to lead effectively, not from your emotions, and or being able to evaluate things from a proper perspective. There's a book that I had read many years ago. I think it's called Seven Highly Effective Ways of Leaders or People, or I can't remember the name of it, but the author's name is Stephen Covey, and unfortunately he's since passed away. But great writer, just a great speaker, motivational speaker. And he also was a believer, a Christian as well, just all around great gentleman. And one of the things that he had mentioned in his book was that when we're in our right space, and I'm paraphrasing this in a big way, and I'm just sharing this with you in a way that I just want to make this point here, is that what happens a lot of times is that when we as men, when we come together in our right space, again, having our, you know, the collective thoughts and just in a right state of mind, he talked about measuring twice and cutting once. And as I was preparing for this conversation, I thought about it. I said, wow, that's powerful. And I said, oh, wow. And I've since known what it meant, but I wanted to share it within this broadcast, because the Bible says first spiritual and then natural. So from a spiritual perspective, we as men, we can take a look at a situation that calls for a decision to be made from a spiritual perspective, but then also from a natural perspective, because we are we're human beings. So there's a duality there. But from a right perspective, where all minds are clear, if you will, that we can absolutely look at it from a spiritual perspective, and as we should, but also from a natural perspective. We can look at those things that are possibly affected by a particular decision. And granted, in life, sometimes decisions are they're hard to make, but yet we have to make them. So he says, measure twice, cut once. Think about it. Think about a decision that you've had to make. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a tough decision, but just throughout the course of life, we're making decisions all day long, whether they're verbalized or not. We're always making decisions. So Stephen R. Covey said, measure twice from a spiritual perspective and also from a natural perspective, and cut once. Think about it. Think about, again, not necessarily looking at how difficult of a decision that we might have to make or a situation we've been in, but from a perspective of this is how we view life. This is how we are making those decisions. And when we're making those decisions, it can absolutely be difficult to make those decisions from a spiritual perspective when a man or a woman is not in their right place, when we have not confided or gathered resources or information in a proper perspective. It can be very, very difficult to make a decision and to be able to stick with that decision. Because as men, when we're coming off as effeminate, if you will, how many of us as men, and I'm just going to put this out here, how many of us as men know oftentimes women just change your mind. I don't feel this way today. I don't want roses. I'm tired of roses. I want to change my mind. And it's life. It's life. So that being said, can you think of a man who is effeminate, who just has a tough time making a decision? 9 times out of 10, he's been raised by a single mother. And it's not to say that moms can't make decisions, and obviously they do, or single mothers. It's not to say single mothers can't make a decision. They obviously do make decisions. No different from us as men. They make decisions all day long, every day, on the job, just throughout life, as we all are making decisions. But when decisions are made from a space of our feelings, the likelihood of those decisions being made from our feelings, and yet our feelings are ever changing. Sometimes 5 minutes ago I felt great, and 10 minutes later I didn't feel so great. The feelings. And if I were to have a conversation with someone, they'd probably think I was nuts. But as men, how often have we experienced this from women? And can we think of a man who is having a difficult time making a decision? And so I would venture to say that it's a good chance that the young man who perhaps may be an adult now, it's a good chance that the young man has been raised by a single mother or a 2-parent household, and the father was not a disciplinary person. The father was perhaps in the sense of what some men might think of themselves, or how some men may see themselves as providers, and that, hey, I am a man and my job is to provide and protect. And disciplining their children is not on that list. And that's the realities. There are a lot of men like that, where that their fathers were that way, and the young boys became that way. Again, pushing away the emotions. And I guess the reverse side of that, or the opposite, conversely, the other side of that is that even if a man is not necessarily emotional, he can absolutely be detached from those emotions because of his father. Not necessarily dealing with the emotions that come. I mean, he's going to be connected somehow. He's not going to escape that. He's either going to be connected to his mother in some ways, being, again, coming off more effeminate, or he'll be connected with his father. And in a lot of ways, he'll be connected with his father as well. But again, when the life hits the fan, a lot of times these young men who become boys, or these young boys who become men, a lot of times when stuff hits the fan, life happens, these men run. These men get emotional about a matter, a lot of times because they are, again, effeminate. They have a difficult time articulating their thoughts, much a lot of times with women, and having a difficult time articulating their thoughts. And again, it's not to say men don't have a challenge with articulating their thoughts. It's just, I mean, it's life. It's life. But because men will come off in a way at times as if they having a situation together, or just, you know, I'm the man in this situation, or at least making sure they put their foot down on a situation. When life hits the fan, when stuff happens, they have a tendency to fall apart because they don't know how to deal with the logical part of themselves, because they're men, again, being wired logically by the Creator. They will come off from a space of being more emotional, then become more catty, as like a woman might be sometimes, and being argumentative about a particular situation, not knowing how to let a situation go, you know, and sometimes that's just, as men, sometimes we have to let those conversations go for our own sanity. I mean, let's face it, guys, we can absolutely be drawn into some stuff because we can, you know, it can be something that we are, you know, we're taking a stand on. And you know, a lot of times, because a lot of times those emotions come up, or these show up for us as men, because there is no confidence there. And the lack of confidence has to, or at least will spill over into the emotional part. The lack of confidence. But the ability to harness confidence doesn't need to stick its chest out, doesn't need to be puffed up about it, but can absolutely, or at least being able to articulate an understanding. And that's where we get our confidence. You know, in a discussion or dispute, the individual is able to articulate their understanding. And it's difficult to articulate your understanding if you're wound up emotionally. But in order to articulate your understanding, you need to come from a place of reasoning. You need to come from a place of being logical. And as I stated moments ago, a lot of times men will come off emotional because of their lack of confidence in a particular area. And this is where we can get the effeminate men, because, again, having been wired more, women being more wired emotionally, hardwired emotionally, and men being logical creatures, where we are wired to reason. We're wired to talk things out. So the question now is, why don't we as men, we don't often talk things out? Why do you think that is the case? Well, I'll tell you the reason why it is the issue. Obviously, there can be many variables there, but the bigger issue is a lot of times men lack the communication. Men have, a lot of times they have problems with communication. And again, going back to this man who will pick up the emotional traits from a woman, you have a hard time explaining feelings. It's hard to explain feelings. It's very difficult to explain feelings. And because men can't explain their feelings, or at least that's just not, again, where we're wired, where we're hardwired in that space, it becomes difficult to know what's going on with us. And for women, a lot of times we can say, hey, we'll say, hey, we may not like the way that she might display such anguish, or if she's angry about something, we may not like the way she displays it, but we know as men a lot of times that this is what comes from women sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And so she gets to pass a lot of times. And I'm not saying that that's the way things should go, but this is what happens a lot of times, is that the woman gets a pass. But as men, because we can also have a difficult time expressing ourselves, we don't often get passes. We can be absolutely labeled, well, what's wrong with him? Why don't you talk? And the communication piece is absolutely important. It's very important. So a woman has every right to say, hey, what's wrong? Why aren't you talking? You can't lead without talking, man. You can't lead. And if two people, a man and a woman, are coming from a space of emotional creatures, that's a mess. That's a disaster waiting to happen. But yet, one person, the woman being in her position as an emotional creature, again, does not mean that she cannot elevate and come to a space of reasoning or being logical, because she too can absolutely be logical, but she is no different from the man. She also needs that example of what a logical human being looks like, or just what does logic look like? What does logical decision making look like? She needs those examples as well, just as the men need those examples. And the lack of those examples, the only other recourse we have as men is to step into an effeminate role. It's not our position, but again, we will often step into that effeminate role. I'm trying to see how long I've been on. It started at 8 o'clock. All right, guys, I started this at 8 o'clock, and I just wanted to come on and talk about why effeminate men cannot become good leaders. I want you guys to share this out. Would love for you to share this out. And as a reminder, I am a men's life coach, and I help men communicate their way to healthy relationships. Guys, we are doing a men's conference taking place here in the Houston, Texas area. That is going to be October 20th and the 21st. That is going to be a Friday and Saturday. Doors open at 7 p.m. Again, in the Houston, Texas area, guys. We are still just ironing some details out. It's going to be in the month of October again. In the month of October, once more, October, I'm going to put this in here. October the 21st, 20th and the 21st of October. That's 2023. October 20th and 21st, 2023. That's this year. Again, taking place in the Houston, Texas area. The conference is entitled Rewriting Success and Revolutionizing Well-Being, the Ultimate 2-Day Men's Conference, taking place here in the Houston, Texas area. I'm pinning the link here. That's not what I want. Okay, so guys, there is a link here in the, I'm gonna go ahead and pin this link here. There's a link here in the IG here that will take you to our website for the conference. And so there you can find out more information about the conference. Again, it's called Rewriting Success and Revolutionizing Well-Being, the Ultimate 2-Day Men's Conference, taking place in the Houston, Texas area, October 20th and the 21st. That's this year, 2023. That's going to be a Friday and Saturday here in the Houston, Texas area. It is going to be a hybrid conference, so that means it is going to be a virtual and a in-person conference. We'd love to see you either on the hybrid end, where you can share the conference with friends and family, some of your buddies, and get some excellent information, or also be in person. Again, taking place for 2 days only in the Houston, Texas area. Rewriting Success and Revolutionizing Well-Being, the Ultimate 2-Day Men's Conference, October the 20th and the 21st, 2023. That's going to be a Friday and a Saturday. Doors open at 7 p.m. sharply, guys. So we'd love to see you there, guys. We're going to be talking about spirituality. We're going to be talking about communication, relationship, some of the things that I'm talking about even now. Other speakers will touch bases on these different topics as well. Again, spirituality, relationship, communication, marriage, singleness, all kinds of different things, guys. Our emotional stability, mental awareness, all kinds of different things. We'd love to see you there, guys. Again, follow that link, bit.ly/the men's conference. Once more, bit.ly/the men's conference. Check out the link there. It'll take you, actually, it's in my bio here of my my IG account here. So definitely check that out there, guys. Would love to see you there. So guys, that's going to do it. So once more, we've been talking about why effeminate men cannot become good leaders. This is definitely not a dig on men. I absolutely love being a man. I love the skin that I'm in, and I have no qualms or quarrels with that. I have no qualms or quarrels with men or women. This is just a topic that was placed in my heart, and I found it to be important to share and talk about. So if you could help me out here, make sure you share this video with someone who would be inclined to learn something, and invite them to share with others as well. So guys, I'm going to say ciao for now. We will talk with you later. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.